Yeah, Ma, good morning. Welcome to today's session. So in the last class, we learned about virtualization of memory CPU. Okay, I give an introduction regarding how we can virtualize the CPU along with the memory. It is the time to learn about little bit about IO virtualization along with the in-depth knowledge of CPUs. Okay, multi-core systems. Right, Ma? Let us start our concept today. So IO virtualization. Okay, it's the second part of the fifth part of third unit. Ma, I already explained and uploaded the video for the part 1. It's a part 2. So IO virtualization. For example, a lot of IO devices are needed, like printer, mouse. Okay. So all these devices are connecting and sharing our resources distributedly, which are scattered around the world. Okay. So, but whenever the virtualization is needed, means in terms of different OSs are using our devices, how we can share these devices by different OSs or in terms of virtual machine monitor supporting virtual machines. Okay, so this can be done in terms of three categories, ma, right? First of all, what is IO virtualization involves? Managing the routing of IO request between the virtual devices and the shared physical hardware. Okay, between the virtual devices means those operating systems, that is a guest OS, and our original OS and the hardware. Those also have to take care of our original and host OS also. So how this can be done is in terms of three categories, ma. See these three: full device emulation, para virtualization, and direct IO. The full device emulation means all the requests which you are going to satisfy by original IO devices like keyboard, mouse, monitor, etc. etc. All this device copy or functionality is going to copied in the VMM itself. Okay, in the VMM itself. Okay, so all our devices fully is going to be emulated. Those software or conversion needed libraries are stored in the VMM itself. So he will take care of all the conversions. No need to worry. Coming to the para virtualization, here there is a need of swapping. Okay, one level of conversion from the VMM to OS need by separate hardware or by separate software, and the reverse also from the original to the VM we need. Okay, so that is second category. And third category is directly any virtual machine can able to operate our devices directly. Okay, so these are the three methods, ma. Let us see one by one. First one is the first approach for IO virtualization. Generally this approach emulates well-known real world devices. So all the devices which we are going to use is going to be emulated. So all the functions of a device are bus infrastructure such as a device emulation, identification, interrupts and DMA are replicated in software. Okay, in the software only they are going to be replicated. Okay, no need to worry about the host OS and the guest OS. The VMM will take care of. The software is located in the VMM and acts as a virtual device. So the software supporting for this emulation is going to be stored in the VMM, right? So IO access request of the guest OS. Any guest OS is requesting any of our IO devices is going to be trapped, means unmaskable interrupt. That request have to satisfied mandatorily by our OS. Okay, are trapped in the VMM which interacts with the IO device. This is happening. Okay, see the diagram for this. This is our devices, real devices we have. Our device drivers supporting for these devices. The IO stack, which is a stack in terms of servicing the request of the VMMs, multiplexes and drives a physical device. Device emulation. Device C. With the device emulation, how the device is looking for us is same copied here. Means the functionality of this device is copied into this here only. So emulates a virtual device. And coming to the device drivers which are supporting by the guest OS may not be same of our device driver. Okay, who will take care of this? This will take care of all the conversion by virtualization layer of VMM. See, the guest device driver, they have their own drivers. The virtual device, they have their own device. Is any physical device they are owning? No, it is our device they are copying. Right? So all the transactions which we need, mapping, multiplexing, emulation is going to be done by virtualization layer only. So if it is so, then it is called a full virtualization concept. Coming to the second one, the para virtualization method of IO virtualization is typically used in Zen. We will learn about this about the Zen in the previous classes. The Zen take care of this para virtualization. Okay, it will divide the drivers. What is happening? They need conversion. It will convert at the time of execution only, but it doesn't have any software like the previous one, right? It has a split driver model consisting of front end driver and the back end driver. Both they have different drivers. The front end driver is running it domain U, okay, and the back end driver is running at the domain 0, which is a pre-rest one. The priority one is the domain 0. Whenever the domain 0 have running, domain 0 is acting, means it have the priority to control the other devices also. So our OS have domain 0, back end is ours, so for front end is theirs. So our device drivers are going to control their drivers. Okay, they interact with each other by a block of shared memory. So how they are going to be interacting means by using the shared memory. Okay, so the front end driver manages IO request of guest OS. So the front end will take care of the guest OS IO request, and the back end, which I said previously, will take care of our original devices request and operations. Okay, so back end driver is responsible for managing the real IO devices and multiplexing the IO data of different VMs. Right, it comes with a higher CPU overhead. Why? Means we need two conversions, that is from front to back and back to front. So who will take care of this? The VMM will not take care of anything here. In the first method, the VMM will take care of all the transactions and conversions regarding the IO devices. But here the CPU will take care of, because the CPU is a mediator one between us, our devices, and the other guest OS devices. So the CPU will have to spend more time, the switching time, which will reduce the total performance of a device, right? Coming to the direct IO, any virtual device, any virtual machine can able to directly access our IO devices. The software like that is going to store in the IO in the guest OSs itself. Virtualization lets the VM access devices directly. It can achieve close to native performance without high CPU cost. So with this, there is no intervention or interruption to the original CPU. But who will take care of? The VMMs only have to take care of. All the burdens and the hurdles have to be the VMM only. Okay, sorry, the VM only, not by us or any VMM, right? However, the current direct IO virtualization implementation focus on networking for mainframes. Okay, so there are a lot of challenges for commodity hardware devices. Commodity means the biggest devices. Okay, so of course we need, because our device IO software is going to be different from the guest OS device IO. So in that case, we have to take care of all the transactions, right? See here. So if you observe this diagram, the actual operation which is happening in the direct IO is here. The network packets is going to be sent. Okay, through the network we are going to communicate. The request came from the guest OS regarding the IO port. The virtual machine monitor, which is outside of all the context. See, in this context, what is happening? Context which is going to be happening from the guest OS to our original OS. We'll try to switch. Okay, the device drivers which is supporting for the guest OS is going to be operate, and actually the whatever app we need in the virtual machine, because the virtual machine itself will take care of. Okay, they are going to call our driver. With the internet again, they are going to be call our driver. Okay, here the conversion between this guest OS and our OS is going to be converted. Finally, this driver is going to be giving a code which can be understood by us. That is host Ethernet driver will take that code which is converted from their language to our language, and finally they are going to access our IO devices. Okay, right, this is a one-way communication, this is a one-way, that is packet sending. Coming to the receiving, the same operation will take care of by the receiving side also. The app which is supporting this conversion will take care, it will accept the input here, it will convert supporting drivers, and it will transfer the same to the VMM. The VMM will transfer to the guest OS, and while the same operation will take care of to next level in the reverse direction. Okay, so this is happening here. Okay, if you observe here, so it is sent to Ethernet hardware. The Ethernet hardware device data is going to be sending to our driver. Our driver will convert into VMM support driver, and finally to the VMM app, the reverse direction. Okay, now that this is happening. Next, virtualization multi-core process. See, is it possible to virtualize the multi-core process? What is a multi-core, ma? Whenever there is a single computer, okay, and in the single computer means single processor, we have a multi-cores. We learn about this multi-cores in the previous concepts, right? How we have been using the threads, multi-threading concept in the GPU, graphics processing unit, where n number of threads are using to process our data, right? So virtualization in multi-core processor is relatively more complicated than virtualizing a unicore processor. We know about this. Though multi-core processors are claimed to have higher performance by integrating multiple processor cores in a single chip, we are saying that it is giving the better performance only because of multi-core concept and multiple processing concept. But a little bit of overhead we need. But multi-core virtualization has raised some new challenges. What are the challenges? For computer architects, compiler construction, system designers and application programmers. So these are all the persons who will take care of, and they have to be operate in a perfect manner so that this multi-core virtualization is going to be happen. Here we have two difficulties as per the author. What the difficulties is, multi-core means many cores, and many core processors have to be running parallelly even in the virtualization also. Why? To improve the efficiency and the performance of a system. See, if you have a lot of applications and a lot of processors are ready, if you are not able to schedule those applications to the processor, means process will sit idle. Okay, it can't do anything. So our time is going to be wasted. So what we have to design is, here also the application program must be parallelized to use all cores fully. The first challenge. Second challenge is, who will assign the jobs to the cores? First thing, if we are not able to assign even the applications we have, okay, even the applications we have, we are not able to assign those applications to the cores, it's a big task. Here all applications have to run parallelly with that. These applications have to assign to the cores. Okay, so these are the two major design issues here. Consider the first challenge, means all programs have to be run parallelly along with the other devices also, means the new programming models, languages and libraries need to be supporting all applications. Whatever type of application, we don't bother, but the application have to be run your course, that's it. So for that, the converting or portability concepts have to develop by programming models, languages and libraries. The second challenge has spanned research involving scheduling algorithms and resource management policies. Okay, next, physical versus virtual processor cores. Is there any difference between these physical cores and the virtual cores? May not, but the main context again here is, the main concept is scheduling. A person called as a Wells proposed a multi-core virtualization method to allow hardware designers to get an abstraction of low-level details of the processor cores. So whatever processor cores details are needed to use by the virtual machines at the top level is going to be giving the abstract layer, means they are going to be converted in that concept. So this technique elevates the burden and inefficiency of managing hardware resources by software. So the software have to be in a perfect manner. So it is located under the ISA. Instruction set emulator is going to be used, okay, and remains unmodified in the VMM. The VMM only will take care of this. See, this is our cores, our chip. We have a core 1, core 2, up to a number of physical cores we have. The instruction set architecture. The instruction set architecture which will convert from our instructions to their own instructions and vice versa, okay, which are running at the virtual machines, virtual machine 1, 2. See, these are the different virtual machines having virtual operators or virtual processors. Whenever a virtual processor is requesting some request for some application, the software which is running by the VMM have to allot this work to virtual cores. See, we have 4 applications here, but we have 3 cores here. We have to make 3 cores fully busy. Okay, so these cores are very busy because of V1, V0 and V3. This one have to wait for the whenever one core has been freed from its operation. Right, ma? It's a good architecture. I hope you understood this. What is happening here? The VMM which is isolated with instruction set architecture, whenever the different VMs applications are requesting the service of our physical cores, they have to assign fully. Okay, so here we are able to meet two challenges. One is all applications are running parallelly, V0, V1, V3 running parallelly, right? And we are able to assign or make our cores fully busy so that the efficiency will improve. So both challenges are met with this architecture. Right, ma? Yes. So illustrates the technique of a software visible vCPU. There is a virtual CPU moving from one core to another and temporarily suspending execution of vCPU when there is no appropriate cores on which it can run. See, whenever there is no core available, physical core available, we have to suspend the request of the virtual machine request. And a very, very important one here is virtual hierarchy. Hope you remember the hierarchy word. What is the hierarchy, ma? Maintaining some levels, whatever processing you have, whether it is a memory, IO devices, whatever. Okay, we have to maintain some hierarchy. With that board, at the top level, the most important one is there. At the bottom level, the second importance will be there. Whether you are going to be giving priority from top to bottom or bottom to top, that is your wish. I want to give priority from the bottom to top. The bottom one is the first important to me. Next to the above bottom, next to the above bottom up to top, I will give you. Okay. See, the emerging many core chip multiprocessors provide a new computing paradigm. What it does is, they are going to share some memory, right? They are going to share some memory. If they are trying to access everybody a shared memory, what will happen? What will happen means, so the changes modified by one processor have to notify by other one at the same time. Okay, but with the shared memory, some time will take to notify this and to make changes. So for that, what they are going to do is, they are going to maintain the memory in some levels, L1, L2, L3, along with the processors also. See, the below processors are going to be satisfied by the first request person. If the below processors are fully busy, they are going to move into the second level like this. See, we will see. Instead of supporting time sharing jobs or one or a few cores, we can use abundant cores in a space sharing. In this, single threaded or multi-threaded jobs are simultaneously assigned to separate groups of cores for long time intervals, right? So optimize the space shared workloads. They propose using a virtual hierarchy to overlay coherence and caching hierarchy. See, I will show the diagram. No, I will first show the diagram, later we will come to this. If you see this here, we have different virtual machines here, right? We have different virtual machines up to virtual machine 0 to 7 means 8 machines we have. So in this we have different cores here, So if you observe here, we have different caches here. It is L1 cache. So every core is divided in terms of 3 parts. First one is a processor, next one is a L1 core, shortest memory, next one is L2. This processor have to be used first L1, the local memory. First have to use L1. If it is satisfied, they have to move to the L2 cache. Okay, if it is so, it is called as a hierarchy concept. If you see here, a virtual hierarchy is a cache hierarchy that can adapt to fit the workload or mix of workloads. So what it is happening, the hierarchy first level locates the data blocks close to the cores, needing them for faster access. So very CPU which is very close to, which are very close, they are going to be locating first, later to next. When a miss leaves a little, whenever the data is not available, the nearest cores, it first attempt to locate the block within the first level. A miss at the level 1 cache, that is whenever there is no data level 1 cache, they will move to L2 cache. Okay, so that is happening here. Yes. Okay, so in this what is happening is, the workloads are divided in terms of clusters. See, all the virtual machines, see VM1 and VM2 are using web server application. VM0 and VM3 are using the database application. They are gathering each other. VM4 to VM7 they are using as a middleware, if you observe here. So we have 3 clusters here, VM0 and VM3 are for database workload, VM1, 2 for web server, and finally 4 to 7 are for middleware. Okay, so they are going to clubbing all these as a levels. Okay, the application supporting the same virtual machines are combining, they are allotting some level 1 cache. Whenever data is not available at the L1 cache, they have to make a move to the L2 cache. So time is going to be saving, because see, if your data is here, you are somewhere far away from the data, the CPU have to search for the data. It will take more time. Searching is one time, okay, searching will take more time, along with the switching context also. Switching context means getting the data from that location to our data. If the supporting bandwidth is not sufficient for us, what will we do? It will automatically take more time, right? However, space sharing applies equally within a single operating system. Okay, see this. The level 1 cache, which are supporting the same type of application, are going to be clustering here. Okay, see this. These are all this. The level 2 hierarchy VM. CMP server consolidated by space sharing of VMs into many cores, forming multiple virtual clusters to execute various workloads. So whatever these are all virtualization, not physically. We can't move our devices at one place as to form a cluster. So logically they are moving as a cluster. So this is all the processor which are doing on one type of application. This is another application. This is another application. This is another application. Okay, like this the virtualization is going to happen so that they can share. See, if they are distributed and they are worrying for the data, everybody have to run for the data, right? So this is how these IO devices and multi-core chips are running now, right? This is about the theory. That's it, ma. Yeah, what is the first level? Yes, the VM operates in isolated fashion at the first level. This will minimize both access time and performance interface. Yes. The second level maintains a globally shared memory. Firstly, we have to satisfy by itself because the data have to be available at the local memory only. If not, in some cases, they have to move to the global memory. Okay. Right. So this is about 3.5. Okay, ma. Part 2. In the next class, we will learn about the last but one topic of this third unit, virtual clusters concept. So till then, have a nice day. Bye, ma.